My friend and I were bored one day and decided to go to a farmer's market in a city 30 miles from where we lived. We made it there and began walking around, looking in stores, and enjoying the music being played on the streets where the farmer's market was located. After a while of walking, we went to meet up with one of our friends in the same city for a group meeting. As we were walking, trying to find where our friends were, we saw this group of people playing music. A couple was dancing all fancy, so me and my friend decided we wanted to try and show them up, even though we suck at dancing. We caught ourselves trying to salsa dance, and out of nowhere some hobo came up behind us, draped his arms around us and started dancing too. My friend and I look at each other with wide eyes and try to get out of the man's grasp, but he's holding on to us tightly. Suddenly he says, "I can't let you girls dance alone," and then, horrifyingly, he pulls us even closer. I look at this guy's face and see that he has this thing on his lip, a bump or something. I freak out, look at my friend and motion toward the thing on his lip. I was like, oh God, this guy probably has some sort of disease. My friend and I just laughed it off and said, okay, we got to go now. He finally lets us go and watches us as we hurry to a cafe that's close by. The guy smelled so damn bad, like trash and alcohol. I was close to puking just from the smell. My friend and I were completely freaking out, so we walked into the cafe and took our sweaters off since this guy was touching all over them. Then we washed our hands repeatedly. We were so paranoid that this guy was going to come back. Thank God he didn't. Now, every time we return to that city, we're always watching out, ensuring we don't run into that creep again. So this happened last summer. On one Saturday, when it was particularly nice outside, my cousin and I decided to meet up and go to the local farmer's market to get lunch together and hang out. However, we live on opposite sides of the city, so she said she would pick me up by the train station near the market. This train station doesn't exactly have any good pickup locations, so I went across the street to a costume store and asked her to get me in the parking lot. When my cousin is outside, she texts me asking me to come out. Now, this costume shop is in a strip plaza, and right in front of the entrance, there's a little area where you can sit with bushes and flowers. This is probably a good place to note that I'm a petite Asian girl, and since it was so nice out, I was wearing shorts and a nice sleeveless shirt. As I was leaving the store, a group of 5 homeless men were drinking Slurpees and sitting in that area. It was about 11 a.m. and I could smell the alcohol radiating off of them. They all turned to look at me, and one guy stood up and started to catcall me. So without replying, I scanned the parking lot to find my cousin, who is parked very far away, and begin to walk over to the opposite side of the plaza. Except this guy starts following me. He tells me he thinks I'm so pretty and hot, how he's always wanted to have an Asian girl. I didn't even know what to think of that, and honestly, I thought he was going to try to abduct me. Of course, at this point, I'm beginning to panic, and on the verge of an anxiety attack. I keep my eyes trained on the ground, and hope that my cousin will see me and come and save me. At this point, the man begins to get frustrated with my lack of response and calls me a tease. Thankfully, my cousin sees me and this strange homeless man and tries to pull over to where I am. As I'm leaving, he asks me for a high five and extends his fist. Trying to be polite, I gently tapped his fist and booked it to the car. So, creepy, drunk homeless man, let's not meet again. There's this farmer's market in my town every weekend, and my mum and I have gone fairly often since I was a baby. There is all your typical farmer's market stuff, but my favourite was this one tiny booth that sold honey candy and beeswax candles. It was an old guy who, at the time, was probably in his late 70s. He handmade all the items from his bees and sold them every weekend to keep active and make some extra pension money. His booth was the highlight of the trip. He had 3 different kinds of candy: plain honey, licorice honey, and melon honey. I consider the flavour of these candies to be a very solid part of my childhood. From visiting almost every weekend, we got to know each other a bit, and I was a loyal regular. He seemed to like me and always gave me samples of the candy every time so I could decide on which kind, even though I had tasted all of them countless times. I never talked to him. Sometimes I would say thank you or have a nice day when I left, but never more. One day that suddenly changed. I was about 13, wearing my new black trench coat, thinking I looked like a mysterious Parisian fashionista. I approached the booth, ready for my samples as usual, and while I decided on the bag of the week, when he suddenly started talking to me. He asks me if my dad has a shotgun. I'm caught completely off guard, as our routine never involves chit-chat, so I say, "I'm sorry, what?" thinking I misheard him. "Does your dad have a shotgun?" "No, I don't think so," I stutter. The atmosphere has suddenly changed, and I look around quickly to find my mum, but she is somewhere else looking at flowers. "He really ought to get one with a daughter as beautiful as you," he says. I have no idea what this man is on about, so I just laugh uncomfortably. "To chase the boys away," he clarifies. I'm freaking out internally, trying to look for signs of dementia, thinking maybe my new coat makes him not recognize me, thinking I really am a mysterious Parisian lady. "But he must let some of them through if he wants grandchildren," he says, winking. Before I can react, he takes a candy and puts it in my mouth with his fingers. I was so weirded out by this aggressive and new kind of male attention that I didn't even know existed, that I just smiled and laughed nervously. I took a bag of candies and quickly dropped the coins in his hand, before power walking away in my mum's direction. He looked at me while I walked away, and he continued to stare and smile, while I told my mum a couple of booths away. He had an expression like I was telling my mum out of joy, and he any minute could expect my mum to go up and thank him for his advances and generous offer to father her grandchildren. My mum mumbled, "Dirty old man," as we left. So, creepy old candy guy, let's not meet again. Although I know I'll see you around, as you still have your candy booth nearly 10 years later. This is something that happened to me 5 or so years ago. I was fresh out of university with my degree in international development. I wanted to help underserved communities, develop meaningful projects, and see more of the world. I was young, I was naive. Eager to start, I took one of the first jobs that offered me a position. It wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do, but it was adjacent to my interests and, more importantly, took me to a place I'd never been before. When I arrived, I loved absolutely everything. It was beautiful, sunny and green. My new co-workers, all local staff, were so amazing and kind. My boss invited me to play soccer on Sundays with his family. My fellow project coordinator would go out dancing with me on the weekends. My roommate, a fellow expat also working in development, was a fun and spunky woman I adored. I felt so blessed. Then one day, it all changed. I was walking downtown with a friend. There was a farmer's market that had great fresh produce straight from the farmers. It was about a 20-minute bus ride from my apartment, so not close, but not incredibly far either. My friend and I loaded up and began walking to a quiet corner to call a cab to help us haul our goods back. Then I heard it. "Hey, hey, miss, insert my exact address here." It took me a second to realize what he was shouting. I turned around to see a man hanging out of his car, slowly crawling along the road with us. My friend recognized my address too. She turned to me and asked, "Do you know him?" I'd never seen him before. He kept shouting, "Yeah, you're living in the back house on the second floor, right?" That made it even worse. I lived on a big suburban lot with 2 houses, one in the front, where my landlady and her family lived, and the second in the back. The second house was split into 2 apartments. The bottom floor housed 2 students, while I lived on the second floor with my roommate. You couldn't see the second house from the road, much less the stairway that led to the second floor. My heart was pounding. I wanted to shout back at the guy, but I was scared. I was a 22-year-old woman living in a foreign country and didn't want to draw attention. I didn't know how people would react. I didn't know how he would react. So we walked. My friend tried to comfort me, saying that maybe he knew my landlady's family. I was probably the only redhead in the whole country. He could be a neighbour I hadn't met. The encounter didn't leave me. It stayed in my mind. A week or so passed, and I stopped glancing behind my back whenever a car drove by. I started to feel secure. Then he showed up again. I was walking home from work, and it was getting dark. My office was a 15-20-minute stroll from my apartment, perfect as a quick way to stretch my legs. I was halfway home when I felt someone watching me, then the slow crawl of a car sidling up beside me. I knew it was him without looking. "Miss my address?" he said, leaning out his window, one hand on the wheel. "Why are you shy?" I ignored him and kept walking. There was no one around. It was getting dark. "Come on," he coaxed. "Let me give you a ride. I know where you live." That was the opposite of reassuring. I started to feel my chest tighten. I wanted to call someone, but didn't know what he'd do if I reached for my phone. I was practically jogging now. but he sped up to match my pace. "Listen, bitch." And now he was angry, his voice hard. "You don't just ignore a man like that." I wondered what I'd do if he stopped the car. He looked fit, young. He could probably catch me, he could hurt me. So I did something that, in retrospect, seemed absolutely bizarre. I yelled at him, wildly, rabidly. I did it in my first language, not what they spoke in this country. Not a language he would ever have heard, probably. I screamed curse words and threats, anything I could think of. I'll never forget the confused fury on his face, but he did slow down, letting me run ahead. I could see a woman at a bus stop at the intersection ahead. If I got to her, maybe she'd help. Maybe he'd get scared off. By the time I got to the woman, he was gone. I kept walking home, looking behind me with every step. I told my roommate about what had happened. She told me not to bother reporting it to the police since they were corrupt and wouldn't do anything. When I told my boss, he told me the same. He said he had a baseball bat and would come whenever I called. I saw the man again 2 weeks later. He was sitting in his car, parked in front of the gates to my apartment. I'd been about to take out the trash, but retreated before he could see me. I told my landlady, and he drove off when she went over to confront him. This continued for weeks, not every day, but once or twice a week. He was always there, waiting. I took cabs to and from work. I never travelled alone. I barely slept, waiting for him to break in and kill me. During my last weekend abroad, he almost did. I went out drinking with a group of my friends, 4 of us in total. We were celebrating the end of my contract, and I was happy to go home in a few days. I couldn't wait to see my family. I couldn't wait to put an ocean between me and the man. We had beers at a local bar, a 5-10 minute walk max from my apartment. When it started to get late, around 1, we tried to get a cab, but it was impossible. The roads were jammed and people were everywhere outside. Cabs couldn't even get to us, so we thought that even though others warned us not to, let's walk home. It would be faster than calling a cab, we'll be fine. We're a group of 4. No one will hassle us. We got halfway there when we had to cross a main road. There were no street lights. This was not that kind of place. The road was absolutely empty, not a single car in sight. We crossed the road. A few more minutes, but then we were backlit with the bright headlights of a car coming up. We glanced back. A cop car, 2 men in the front, and I knew, even though I couldn't see from the bright lights in my eyes, he was driving. He was a fucking cop. The Jeep slowed, as I knew it would. He rolled down the window to draw. "Hey, Miss Address. Nice night, yeah?" My friends immediately knew who he was. I could see how nervous they were. We were alone on a dark, empty street in the middle of the night. They were cops, so they were armed. No one would intervene, probably. Too dangerous. "You girls need a ride?" he leered. His friend, who I could see now, had a massive grin on his face. My last few days, I thought, and this is how it ends. We sped up our pace. I don't know what our plan was other than to get away. Then I heard one of the Jeep doors open as the passenger jumped out. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, although I didn't dare turn back to see. We were at the turn to my street now. 2 minutes more to get to safety. The car was right behind us. Whoever had gotten out of the car was right behind us. 2 of my friends were ahead now, while another clutched my hand and dragged me along. Then, out of nowhere, another car appeared. They were coming from the opposite direction, illuminating us all. When they slowed to see what was going on, I'd never been so grateful. It was an older couple who looked concerned. I think they knew something very bad was about to happen. I heard, not saw, the car door swing open. I almost got hit as they sped past us in a hurry. The other car stayed, watching. They offered to escort us home, driving alongside just in case. But I knew he wouldn't come back, not tonight. I still took a cab with my friends to their place for the night. We took my roommate with us just in case. Nothing happened after that. My last 2 days were uneventful, although I couldn't shake the feeling that he might show up at any moment. Driving the airport all packed up and ready to go home, my cab got pulled over by a cop. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't him, although it could have been. It wasn't until I got on the plane, until I landed in my home country, that I finally felt that terror leave me. I still get nervous when cars drive up behind me and men roll down their windows to shout at me. It's never him, but still, you never know. So, stranger who knows where I live, let's not meet again. Do you have scary stories you'd like to hear told? Send me an email at nocturnalreveries@proton.me. I will be sure to credit you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more tales, both true and imagined. Until we meet again, I've been Basil, and you've been lovely. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.